Spectrum News 1 presents LA Times The Envelope Roundtables. Brought to you by the Amazon original movie, The Report, for awards consideration.
I'm Mark Olson.
I'm Amy Kaufman, and this is The Envelope.
Glad to meet you.
Elton.
Dolomite is my name!
Damn.
Perfecto.
What happens tonight?
All of it!
Maybe get to know each other.
What's this? It's bad, you know.
Just chill, just chill! I ain't finished yet!
No.
Yeah.
You know what we should have? An all-girl kung fu army.
We're good. We're ready. Eddie, I'm going to start with a question for you. Your role in Dolomite is My Name. It has all your gifts for comedy, but it also has like a pathos, a vulnerability that we don't always see. Do you feel like comedic performances don't kind of get enough credit, especially during award season?
Credit? I don't know if credit is the right word. My whole life, whenever I've done anything that was kind of good, they'll ask me like, "That was good, but you ever think about doing something serious?" So there's some kind of thing in people's minds where it's, comedy is different from drama, and I think it's all kind of the same stuff. It's all acting.
Why do you think people see that difference?
I don't know. Maybe it's because laughter is so accessible. Everybody kind of knows somebody that's funny. Everybody's got a friend that could reduce them to tears. So I think they might think when a person's funny, they're just funny. It's natural, and when a serious actor does a comedy, they appreciate it. They'll give it up then.
Robert, you've done a few comedies. Do you feel that way? Do you find people respond differently?
No, I mean, it depends on what kind of comedy. There's all kinds of movies that have funny stuff in it, that are ironic, ironic situations that are funny, that are real. There's other stuff that's more like what he does is great, it's a different thing, but it's also serious, certain thing. The thing that you did, you were up for the Academy Award.
Oh, for Dreamgirls.
You were terrific in that.
Oh, thank you.
And I mean, you had everything.
Yeah, it was funny and had some serious stuff.
You came from an action background and franchise with Kingsman to a musical.
Yeah.
How did you get your head around that, and what was the most difficult part of leaping to Elton John?
I don't know. I mean, I was always the guy who was picked last for the sports team, so finding myself in action always felt like more of a departure than being involved in a musical. I actually think it felt like the enormity of it was so great that all I could do was handle it very microcosmically and think about it one beat at a time and tackle it as you would anything else. As Eddie's saying, a character's a character. If it's comedy or something tragic or it's an action thing, you still want to just treat the character with all of the love and forensic scrutiny that you can bring to it.
So you and Elton grew really close, and Antonio, you and Pedro have been incredibly close over the years, but have also had sort of ebbs and flows in your relationship. Can you talk about what brought you two back together for this movie and where your relationship was when you started?
Well, that's actually a question that, probably Pedro can, answer better than me because he's the one who calls me. But, we started working almost 40 years ago. And, there was something interesting happened because for 22 years we didn't work together. And then he called me to do a movie called The Skin I Live In. And what happened is that I arrived there, because Pedro loves to rehearse, so I arrived to rehearsal with, everything that I learned in Hollywood. And I arrived there, I said, Pedro, this is the way that I do things now, I have learned all of this and stuff like that. And after a week rehearsing, he said to me, all of those things that you learn in Hollywood are not useful to me. So where are you? And I was like, oh my God, what happened here? So at that time, I kind of confronted him. And we are friends, so it's a confrontation. It was creative, but there was tension on the set. And then I saw the movie, And I just realized that he managed somehow to bring out of me a character that I didn't even know I had inside. So it was kind of a lesson to me at the time. And so I thought, you know, I'm going to have another opportunity to work with him. And then this thing came, and I read the script and I said, oh my God, he's just calling me to play him.
El cine es un trabajo muy físico. Desgraciadamente yo no estoy en condiciones. En realidad, ese es mi gran problema.
Do you all keep a wish list of directors that you want to work with? Like, Rob, you've, over the last few years, Herzog, Cronenberg, Robert Eggers now on The Lighthouse. Like, is that what you're keeping in mind? Like, just, I want to try out all these different filmmaker collaborations.
Yeah, I definitely did when I first started. I kind of had maybe 12 people I really wanted to work with, and probably the 12 people I ended up working with eventually. But yeah, I think in general, because I sort of fell into acting, I just kind of, if I've seen something where a performance has sort of touched me in some way, I just think the chances are, if you just try and work with that director, I think the probability is a little bit higher that they'll bring something out of you which you connected to in their previous work.
You ain't no copper. You ain't the president. You ain't my father. And I'm sick of you acting like you is.
Daniel, on Queen and Slim, so this is the feature debut for director Milena Matsoukas, although she's made a lot of music videos, especially for Beyonce. When you're working with a director for the first time, how do you kind of get used to, how do you kind of establish a dynamic between you? What is that like?
I think Melina's brilliant. And she did a series called Insecure that I love as well. And her eye is amazing. So I really respected her. I love her decisions that she makes and all the stuff. And it's kind of like, okay, how can we bring this to life, essentially?
Put your hands on your head and get on the ground now. Are you serious? Get on the ground!
Why is he under arrest?
Get back in the car!
I am an attorney. I'm reaching for my cell phone.
There's a boldness to Queen and Slim in the style of it that's just really exciting, and I don't know if that did anything for you in your performance, if it freed you up at all?
I had a friend that watched it, and they said that it feels uninterrupted. And that's what it was. It was kind of like singular. This is very much Melina and Lena. This is how they see the world. And I think you rarely get to see black women's perspectives in cinema in that kind of way. And so it's amazing to support that. And I just think in terms of little things, like I start the film when it starts as a Tinder date and I'm praying. And that's Melina. She's been on a date when a guy starts praying before he eats. That's just a nuance that kind of is just thrown in there. So it makes it feel more current and more of now.
Robert, with The Irishman, I mean, this brings you back together with director Martin Scorsese. The two of you haven't worked together since Casino in 1995. At this point in your career for both of you, what's it like when the two of you get back together?
It was back to normal. I mean, nothing really changed. It's always great to work with Marty. He's receptive to ideas. Whatever you want to do, he'll go along with, unless it's so off the wall. And so if after a while you get to a point where you don't, whatever you say, it's going to be good one way or another, even if you don't do it or use it, or you do try it, then he'll cut it out or whatever.
Hello? Is that Frank?
Yes.
Hi, Frank. This is Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah. Glad to meet you.
Well, glad to meet you, too, even if it's over the phone.
Pacino said it well, because that was the first time Al had worked with Marty. They had tried a few times, but it didn't happen. So he said, just like working with him on a tightrope, and he's the net. It just makes you feel everybody. It's not just me; it's the crew. It's every creative person on the set. So, and I'm lucky to have been able to work with him all these years.
Eddie, you were involved in getting Craig Brewer to direct Dolomite Is My Name. What was it about him that you liked for him to direct the movie?
Well, I loved his the other films he had directed, Hustle and Flow and Black Snake Moan, and I met with him, and he was so smart about Rudy Ray Moore. Yeah, in the studio at first they were like, we got to get a black director to direct this, and it was like, why? It was like, well, it's because it's so black. It should be a black director directing it.
Across this nation, inner cities are being plagued by violent crime. I feel the government hasn't stepped up.
That's it. It's Whitey's fault.
The mayor's corrupt, and there's an exorcism.
An exorcism.
Yeah, you know all that whole
Mother in hell. I don't know how that fits into our urban motif.
Daniel, I heard you out there kind of like geeking out a little bit that you've always been a fan of his.
Oh, bro.
Yeah.
Look, you try to put me in it, man.
Sorry,
trying
man.
to be cool and that, trying to be easy. Nah.
Is there something you've always wanted to ask him?
I did hear one story.
Just one?
Oh, no. I heard a story about there was a director and you stuck it on him.
I stuck it on.
Like, do you know what stuck it? You kind of like there was a situation, there was a clash. Maybe I should.
Oh, just on one movie, yeah.
Yeah.
That was it. The only time I ever had that happen was on one movie. And I regretted it the moment after, and I still regret it to this day. Because you should never, ever, get physical with the director. On Coming to America, me and John Landis had a little riff on the set once. I don't like that. It was a horrible thing. Am I the only one that's ever got into physical with the director where it escalated to where, someone was being choked?
I saw a situation. I was like 19, I did a play, and I saw a situation happen, escalate, and I was like, I can never do that. Because he was right.
Who?
But the actor that was it escalated.
He was in the right.
He was in the right, but because he reacted in that way, it looked like he was in.
Exactly. Well, that's why I regretted it.
Yeah. So I
kind of felt like I was in the right for what I was doing. John might say no, but I felt like I was in the right, and you just shouldn't go there.
I remember getting fired from a play once, and the director wanted to hug me at the end because he was like, "Oh, please, just let me hug you," and he started hugging me, and I couldn't get out of the hug afterwards. And he was, this is while he was firing me. And he was like, "Please, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And I was trying to desperately push my way out of it. That's my only altercation, my physical altercation.
But I went on to work with John Landis again after that, and I love John Landis. I made some of my best movies with him. Shout out to John Landis.
That actually raises an interesting question, though. Like, what do you do when your vision or your energy is not vibing with a director and you want to bring it up to them?
I just choke.
I don't know, I feel like it's always a negotiation. It's inherently a really collaborative medium, and I suppose it's how well you can negotiate those difficulties that ultimately determines how good the results are. It's all a conversation, I suppose.
And ultimately, it's the director it's his movie.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's the director's movie.
Yeah. But what's interesting, say if it happens on stage, in a play, it's such an interesting dynamic because at the end of the day, I actually think you could just do what you want. Like when it goes up, you could just go, I'm off.
Autonomy.
You're
Until
the
they
editor.
yell
You're
at
the
you
editor.
after.
Essentially, you're the editor. Do you know what I'm saying? But I've always kind of been on the tip where like, I think it's very healthy to disagree, and then like I just go, if that's what you want, that's what you want. I'll show you why I think it doesn't work, but if that's how you see it, then that's how you see it. And
I've been in situations like that, and you just can do actually two different takes, right?
Yeah.
The way that you understand the character, the way the director understands. What is the problem? The director keeps the film, and at the end, he's going to be the one who is going to edit it. And so probably your version is going to disappear somewhere in a trash can. But I think it's healthy to a certain point.
Absolutely. Disagreeing and all that, that's all part of everybody's trying to make it the best movie. Nobody ever set off to make a bad movie. And having some disagreements and all of that's part of the creative process.
This feels like a good time to catch our breath. We'll be right back.
You knew Red Fox.
Oh, yeah. We was in the kitchen washing dishes together, but I worked with him. And one day he went up in front of the right promoter, got his big break.
Let me ask you a question. Why did the CIA torture people, lie about it, and then hide it from history?
They claim they saved lives, but what they really did was make it impossible to prosecute.
I vehemently disagree with the narrative here.
Nobody else is going to tell this story.
I would like us to be more than the country that did the report. I'd like us to be the country that made it public. We will not allow this to be covered up.
The Report, rated R, in theaters now.
if I can watch one movie again for the very first time, it would be
If I could see one movie again for the very first time.
A Prophet. Un Prophète. In the French name is yeah, it's an incredible film. I watch it like probably once every 2 years. It makes me so happy.
Maybe Hand to Rock the Cradle. It's my sexual awakening.
Welcome back to The Envelope. Well, Robert, in The Lighthouse, you and Willem Dafoe, I mean, it is the story of the movie that the two of you have this very complicated, intense relationship. Did that ever actually get complicated, intense between you and Willem? Like, what was it like to create that really unusual dynamic?
No, I think the kind of environment of where we were shooting it was quite humbling. I mean, it was just constantly under a rain machine. It was freezing all the time, so you're kind of sort of bonded in misery a little bit. But I mean, he's lovely, and he's so kind. I mean, I think he's a really fun person to play with because he's very very responsive. I always quite like he loves being surprised, and so it was kind of fun to just like prepare a little surprise for him in the scene. I mean, no matter what you did, he would somehow manage to kind of adapt and grow into something which you wouldn't expect as well. But yeah, it's a very kind of constructive relationship in every way.
It looked like the kind of movie where you might have hurt yourself. Like, it gets heated to a point of mania between those two characters.
Yeah.
Did anything ever go awry? Like, did a bit of wood land on your head or something?
Sure. I think we had me and Willem did a fight scene, and he had a pad under his shirt, and even though he had a pad there, I still felt a little bit funny punching him. And Willem said, "Come on, just stop pulling a punch. Do it harder. It's gonna look fake." And I'm like, and trying my hardest to do it. And then when Willem just immediately, as soon as I do one, not pulling it, Willem immediately punches me back in the ribs, and like, I've got absolutely no padding in. And Willem is unbelievably strong.
Your foul, rotten-toothed, smelly old mouth.
You damn.
Shut! I ain't finished yet!
Has there ever been a director that beat up the actors? That would be a funny director if it was a director he was like great, but he was known like you could get into a fight and he could beat you up on the set. Has there ever been that guy in the business?
Not that I know.
You know who, if anyone, was behind the disappearance of James Hoffa?
Why this movie now, which is such an endeavor, so long, a huge budget? Why bring it to Scorsese? What about the story felt like you needed to make it?
Well, we were working on another movie. Marty and I had spent a long time trying to find something to do. We had a couple of misses because just out of our control. So finally we settled on this movie about an aging hitman, kind of retired from the West Coast. We were committed. It was greenlit, as they say. Then I was, so Marty was starting to show me old films, like a Jean Gabin film, black and white, about, style that he thought he was gonna, whatever, and we're just starting to get into it. And I said, I have to read this book that I was talking to Eric Roth about a few years earlier when it had come out. He said, you gotta read this book. So I said, I'm gonna read it as research for our thing. He's a hitman, blah, blah, blah. And I read it, and as soon as I read it, I told Marty, I said, you gotta look at this because this is really what we should be doing. And
What made you say that?
the movie was, the book was great. The story, the character, it had historical characters whose outcomes were unresolved, especially Hoffa. So it was all these things that gave it a size, and for us at our age to be doing this kind of thing, and about this guy who's getting older and talking to.
The scenes, particularly between Robert and Mr. Pacino, are a kind of masterclass in. It feels like a dance because they're both so alive to one another that it's like you move here, I move there, and it's that the tension between them you can ping like a string, it's taut like a guitar.
I understand you're a brother of mine.
Yes, sir. Local 107 since 1947.
Yeah. Our friend speaks very highly of you.
Well, thank you.
He's not an easy man to please.
I feel like watching great performances, and if you can identify that, probably helps more than a classical training. Although there's a lot that I loved about being at RADA, but I feel like a lot of what you learn about movies you learn through watching and also just doing it.
Yeah.
Eddie, you said in a recent interview how there were some jokes and things that you did as a stand-up earlier in your career that now you kind of regret, or you certainly wouldn't say now. Was that kind of reappraisal? Was that a difficult point for you to reach? Like, what brought you to that kind of decision?
Well, I think what I said was I'd see some of that old stuff and I'll cringe sometimes. But I think I'm really young when I'm doing that, and I'm dressed really crazy, and that's what I'm cringing at. It's like you see, I have this leather suit on, and I got leather glove with a ring on the outside of the glove, and I'm talking crazy. And some of it when you get older, you look at it, it's really like a disconnect. It's like it's a different person. But I don't have regrets about the material or anything like that. I don't look at it and say, like, oh, I wish I hadn't have said that, but I might cringe at something, because I was being true to who I was at the moment, And a lot of the stuff, you kind of can't look at it now and make judgments about what somebody said when they were 22.
Antonio, you won the Best Actor prize at Cannes this year, which is a huge honor. What did it mean to you to get that at this point in your career? Why do you think now?
I have been practically nominated for every award, and not the Oscar, but many awards in my career. And I never got to be the one who was called. It's very sweet. I will say, awards and they are sweet when they come to you. It feels like somebody just put attention to what you do. That's really the feeling.
Yeah, and Daniel, you were kind of in the opposite situation where early in your career, before you were 30, you were nominated for an Oscar, right at the outset of things. How did that change the experience of acting for you?
Easier to get visas. Canada's nice. Like you said, it's nice to be recognized by people that understand your craft. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's a nice feeling. So it's kind of like, that's nice. But my favorite word during all that was right size. I just need to right size it. Do you know what I'm saying? So, like, if someone got a master's, you're not going to say you've made it. They've got a master's, they need to figure out what they're going to do with it. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's, for me, it was kind of like, all right, what am I going to do with this? If I've got this kind of, how am I going to keep growing and keep figuring out? Because this is just, it was my first lead role in a film, so it's like I need to make sure that I'm not not being defined by it, my identity being defined by it, which is what I kind of had to look into.
Eddie, I've seen some recent interviews where you've talked about how you really would just prefer to stay home and sit on the couch. And
that's what I like doing the most.
But with this kind of period that you're in right now, with the Dolomite movie, you're talking about returning to stand-up, does this feel like some kind of a comeback to you? What does this moment feel like for you?
No, I feel like I got up off the couch and did some work. I feel like, it's important to I've been making movies. I auditioned for SNL at 18. I'm 58 now, and I've been making movies for almost 40 years. So you got to take some time off to, just be a human being. And so I can understand, they like to put a spin and say, oh, this is a comeback. But I just look like, okay, it's a cycle that now it's time to get off the couch and do some work, and I'm rested. And, and you do your best work when you're rested. So I'm not surprised that, I'm rested and did something and it was well received.
I got a question. What do you do on the couch?
Nothing. I like to mindless, really sit on the couch and
called sofa therapy.
Really just do nothing. Just be within earshot of my kids and just do nothing.
So you're not even watching TV? Just
yeah, I watch TV.
Oh, okay.
I watch, but I don't watch, people like quality. I mean, quality. I watch mindless stuff.
What kind of stuff?
I watch ridiculousness and YouTube stuff.
Love and Hip Hop?
No, not Love and Hip Hop, but I watch The Little Women of L.A., the little one with
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, she watches too. It's little people, and they're...
Antonio, are you a fan of sofa therapy as well? Do you find that you need to sort of unplug to recharge?
Yes and no. I prefer to be active. I suffered a heart attack 2.5 years ago. And it's one of the best things that ever happened in my life. It sounds very weird, I know. But it taught me pretty much about, my priorities in life. The things that I thought they were important, they just sunk. And the things that really were important, they stay there.
That's after the heart attack. During the heart attack, you wasn't going, this is good for me. See, so Antonio and I are the same age, so I knew to stop that. I didn't want to have a heart attack one day, so I felt like you take a break and don't have a heart attack.
You know, but it's interesting, you know that the professionals, by professions, they live longer.
Say it again?
The professionals who live longer, by profession, writers. Writers are, they drink, they smoke, but they have an intellectual activity going on. His mind didn't stop. In the moment
when I'm on the couch, my mind doesn't stop, and I'm a writer, so it doesn't. When I'm on the couch, they ain't doing.
Oh, now you're a writer, right?
No. No. Look at my credits. We'll be right back.
This is Niro, a couple smiles. Hold up, cheese. We're almost done.
My favorite movie ever that affects me to this day is Jaws. The first time I heard about Jaws, we were on the school bus going to summer school, and this guy named Victor saw the movie the day before, and he got on the bus and started telling us about Jaws, and we were all in the back, like riveted to what he was saying, and he got so excited telling the story that he said, it hyperventilated and passed out on the bus. Jaws. And I watch it all the time still. Get to every line of dialogue from Jaws. That big long speech that Robert Shaw does, word for word. And Jaws. My answer is Jaws. All right, this part now we're gonna start to soar now.
Yeah, let's go.
We're gonna start to soar. Yeah. That was just, we were just, loosening up. Where do you guys start rolling now? Now the interview's gonna really come alive. We were asking questions and telling little stories and stuff. Watch.
I have a question.
Here we go.
For Antonio. I was wondering, I've seen Pain and Glory, and it's wonderful.
Thank you.
Did you feel that it was in any way compromising, or there were specific challenges portraying someone who you not only know, but is quite literally, most of the time, 15 feet away from you?
Yeah, a priori, yeah, that's what comes to your mind immediately. But then you just go back to the Bible, the script. That's where you hang all the time when you have a problem. You just go back there. I met many of the people that actually are characters in the movie. But sometimes, for example, there was a scene in which I am with my mother in a balcony, and Pedro comes and to direct the actors there. He loves just to read the parts of the actor just to give specific indications. He's very meticulous with this thing, And so he started reading the part of my mother first. I just gave him a replica. And then he started reading mine, and he was going to read it, and he couldn't. I was going to say that line. The line was something like, Mother, I'm very sorry that I am not the son that you wanted me to be. And he was like, and he couldn't.
Right.
So the information that I got sometimes was just emotional information from him. So I didn't need anything more. I said to him, just go back to the combo and just say action, man, because I know what is inside of you. And what is the complexity of, your emotions.
Tu nueva familia. Sí. ¿Saben algo más?
In this particular case was extraordinary weird.
Yeah.
The whole entire process.
That's an interesting question coming from you, because you got so close with Elton, but then
yeah.
he wasn't on set, right?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. He's not calling action and cut. But there is, of course, a pressure when you're, filming a scene where you're doing so much cocaine that your nose starts bleeding, or, or I don't know, or having an episode of histrionics, which, everyone knows Elton has been prone to.
What's this? Number 11 in Italy. The song doesn't work. That's the problem. The record's coked out MOR. The problem is you have never understood me and what I have to go through.
You're portraying someone in what could be considered quite an unflattering way, so it does come with some extra pressure. But weirdly, knowing him actually felt like it personalised and charged the whole thing, because we through the process we became very close. And
Tell me
so
something. Was he on the set with you?
he never came on set when we
Never
were filming.
came.
He came to rehearsals,
Right.
and he and I would get together offset, but he never came to set. And I couldn't. I don't think I could have done it. It would have been just so much pressure to manage. But weirdly, through getting closer to him, I felt it all a little bit more acutely because I care about him on a personal level as well as just wanting to honour his legacy.
Because, Eddie, what was it like for you getting to know Rudy Ray Moore before he passed and then making the movie about him? What, do you
I had no pressure because he died when I made the movie, before I made the movie, so I didn't feel the pressure of him being on the set. I kind of felt like, you know, you can do whatever you want. He's not here. So it was easy to do it. I had met him, but I didn't feel like I had to. I can't imagine what it would be like to play somebody and to meet them. They're like in the wings watching. That would be nerve-wracking.
But what appealed to you about Rudy? Did you see some of yourself in him?
No, not at all. He's the exact opposite. I had a really, the total opposite trajectory in this business than Rudy Ray Moore. I auditioned for Saturday Night Live when I was 18, and I did 48 hours when I was 20. And then things just kind of happen. I like to always say around actors, it always makes the actors nuts. I only had one audition in my whole life, was Saturday Night Live. I'd like to see the actors. They laugh, but the little piece of them is like, what the? Yeah, I had the exact opposite than Rudy Ray Moore. And that's why he was a hero, became a hero of mine. I started making movies, and I started looking at him. In the early days with Rudy Ray Moore, people just watched his, we just watched his movies, because they were kind of like stoner movies. Like you smoke a joint and you watch his pictures and you see like the microphone come into the shot and he'll miss a punch, and we watched it because of that. And then when I got older, it was like, he kind of, I started seeing him like as a guerrilla filmmaker.
Cut! Is there any angle that you could shoot this where it looks like he's actually kicking him?
There's no such angle.
Really?
Do you all feel more ownership or responsibility over projects when you are involved as a producer, as you were on The Irishman, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I always feel, you can't help but feel responsible, especially for certain areas of things, just to make sure it's going to be all right. And one thing is that the director, if they're under a lot of pressure, to try and support them and not let them get pushed around too much. And it always boils down to money, schedule, and everything else. And it's, you know, that kind of thing. So I feel responsible that way, that we have to allow ourselves to be creative as best we can, and we're in it for them to support the director.
Yeah. How are you balancing all those logistical concerns with your acting job at hand?
You can do it. It's over here.
Is it hard for you to balance the acting side and the producing side?
The producing side of it for me is getting it all going. Then once I'm on the set, that's all that I'm doing, is acting.
Robert, you recently signed on, you're going to be playing the role of Batman, and you'd said that this is something you didn't think you would have done a few years ago. What changed for you? What kind of made you feel that you were ready to take on a sort of a big part like that?
I mean, I don't know if I'm ready. I hadn't. There's something about like, it is a different feeling when you're doing something which you kind of know, but there's a big or inbuilt audience for, and there's expectation from the audience. It's kind of fun sometimes to kind of feel that pressure. I mean, I love doing something which is quite unusual and trying to help it find its audience as well. But it's kind of, I don't know, there's this sort of battle sometimes, especially when people really doubt that, they really don't want you to do the part at the beginning. It's quite galvanizing.
You'd be great Batman. Great Batman. And you'd be a great James Bond.
Very much. You'd be a great producer.
And writer.
If I could see one movie for the very first time again, maybe 7, because once you've seen it, it's never quite the same again. Although it's interesting to watch twice because of the reveal at the end and reevaluating it. But it would be quite nice to not know again with that movie, because I think it's amazing.
Now, before we got started today, we were all talking, and it came up that Antonio, Eddie, both of you answered a question. If you could play any role that's sort of in film history, what role would you want to play? And you both said the same thing.
There is a character that I would have loved to play, and it was Jack LaMotta. Robert De Niro, I think, was 1970-something. And it produced a huge effect on me when I saw the movie. I thought that when I left the theater, I thought that my face was the face of the character.
My all-time favorite performance by an actor in a movie is Robert De Niro in Raging Bull. But I don't know if I would be able to pull off Jake LaMotta. So as you were saying? I said I thought that's the single greatest performance by an actor ever is in that movie, is that role. So, but I said I didn't think I could play him.
Yeah, I agree with him. The ideal is that you get to be, to the level of excellence of Mr. De Niro. But I remember when I saw the movie, I think I told you once this, I saw the movie and I was so immersed in the character that I left the movie theater and I thought that I had his face. I remember stopping in front of a display of a store and recognizing myself and saying, okay, calm down, just go home. But it was, for me, a lesson of, how to attack a character, very complicated, very complex, and understand actually the psychology of the character, all the depth of it. And it was for me a turning point about acting.
Yeah, everything, and it's dark, but it has all this funny stuff throughout this.
Crazy.
Like I asked you when we did that movie picture, I was like, do you guys realize how funny that is? Did you purposely do? Because it's stuff that's just funny, like real people funny, and little tiny, that has everything. This can turn into a conversation about that performance in that movie for me.
Well, Robert, what does that make you feel like to hear other actors talk about that performance in particular like that?
I'm honored. I'd rather hear that than the other. Or the people don't say anything because they don't want to say anything because they don't have anything to say. But that's great. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Man.
Why do you think people get so excited about you and Al Pacino together on screen? I mean, you've been in 3 movies now, and I think especially with The Irishman, people are very excited to see the two of you together again.
Well, this was a movie that when we started it, Al was in it, Joe was in it. We had Marty directing. It felt like a perfect thing for all of us to do. His playing Hoffa, Joe playing this character Buffalino, my playing Frank Sheeran. It was just Marty directing. This is it's going to be special.
Do you see the two of you?
People get excited about you two because you two are, everybody universally, accepted as the two of the greatest living actors. So see you two guys together, everybody's going to want to be to see that.
What I loved about The Irishman is there's an intense vulnerability that these men bring, and there's a fragility to who they are in these performances, as well as being strong men. There's a real vulnerability and fragility to it.
Yeah, and being in this business is, people come and go in this business. If you've been around, and to be around as long as they've been around, and to still be doing incredible stuff, that's just, it's unheard, it's unprecedented. It's just, that doesn't happen. This is a business where most movies don't work, and success is the exception, not the rule. And to have a career that goes over decades and decades and decades, you know, you guys are anomalies. You know, it just doesn't happen.
Daniel, so many of the movies that you've done, I mean, Queen and Slim, Get Out, Widows, have had a certain sort of social consciousness to them. Is that something you're seeking out in the roles that you're picking to play?
Yeah, I kind of like films that misbehave. Do you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like that's just what I like to watch. A lot of times I like watching films like, oh, this person's making decisions I wish I could make. Do you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of people are in this space. Like I said, I want to make films for real people. Do you know what I'm saying? That are like living their lives. God, I wish that, like, oh, what would I do in that position? What would I do in that situation? And the weight of, I just found it interesting in Queen and Slim, the weight of saying no to the status quo, the responsibility you have, the reality of that, and how much is projected upon you. And like it's seen as radical, but it's just a decision. Like I don't want to preach to the audience. I want people to go. Like people spend a lot of money to go cinema. It's not cheap. You know what I'm saying? It's like I want people to feel like, oh, look, I've actually been given an experience that I'm really thankful I give my time to. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I heard you talking to Daniel about family and being overseas from the UK. Rob, you're also from there. How have you guys decided to either live here or there and keep a certain distance from Hollywood or be in the heart of it?
I mean, I love coming to Hollywood. You know, I don't feel the need to keep a distance from it. What Dan and I were just saying is that living here sort of doesn't feel like an option at the moment because my mother would kill me. You know, she ain't gonna let that happen. And I think, you know, and I have young sisters as well who are under 10. And if you do more than a couple of months away, they look like different people, and it's quite frightening.
Yeah.
It's
I'm living out a suitcase a bit. That's quite mad. But my mum's an immigrant, so we got to get it. Do you know what I'm saying? You got to make it happen. Where is it? So you just got to. This is like she always tells me. It's like this is the age you got to work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And then the more you do it, then hopefully you're privileged enough to choose. Like I want to be in Cincinnati. Boom.
I'm the first person in my family to be a part of this industry. You know, my family aren't from the sort of film industry at all. And, you know, there's a sense that once you're on a ride, you just got to stick with it and, you know, take whatever opportunities come your way, especially when it involves sitting down with Antonio Banderas, Eddie Murphy, Robert Pattinson.
Wild.
If I could see one movie for the first time again, it would be The Godfather. I think it's a very complete movie in terms of narrative, the work of every actor, the direction's work, script. There's a number of things in that movie that made it very round to me. And I still remember the deep impact that it produced in me when I saw it in the movie theater back in the time, you know, when it opened. It was definitely, that is one movie that I would love to erase out of my mind, start all over again, to see it again, yeah.
Antonio, like talking about coming to the town and who you are, that being an international star would be received differently had your career started in 2019?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I don't see Hollywood so much as a place as I see it as a brand. And if you are branded with a Hollywood thing, it doesn't matter where you do movies, you're going to be always recognized like that, you know. The world is changing so much in our, you know, profession. The platforms that are out there now provide an incredible amount of jobs to young actors, for example, you know. They're working, I'm not going to say names, but everybody knows. And then the new ones that are coming, this is a good thing.
We were talking about the evolution of, you know, platforms and streaming. Obviously, The Irishman and Dolomite are both on Netflix.
Yeah.
Would you ever have predicted you would have been in a movie that would be offered on that platform?
No, but I mean, in our case, Netflix put the money up that no other, to go through the studio situation. We all know what that is. Back and forth, up and down, getting outside investors, hedging their bets by putting certain actors in that are not necessarily right or attempting to do that. And all this stuff. Netflix came in and said, this is it, we want to support it. So that helped us make the decision about the de-aging or youthification, as Marty says. We were, in the beginning of the project, we were thinking, you know, who's going to play us younger? By the time we got further into it and time had passed, Netflix coming in, all of a sudden we had, we could do it in the way that we wanted it. Marty needed to do it. He could have done it the other way, and we would have done it the other way if we had to, but it was better that we did it this way. They came in. I mean, who knows where we're going to be in 20 years with movies and how we see things. We just don't know.
Yeah, Netflix is a godsend to artists. The movie Dolomite Is My Name, we wouldn't have made it without Netflix. It's just them doing all different types of things. The studios, you know, like to make whatever is big and hot and all that, so do a lot of superhero movies and visual effects and stuff like that. And Netflix is doing all kinds of stuff.
As art sort of becomes increasingly political, do you feel a responsibility to address things that are going on in the world in your films? Are those things you think about, or do you prefer for it to remain escapist, sort of like The Lighthouse, Rob?
I think you're kind of addressing something. I mean, I like to think that in trying to do something that feels original, the only way it can be original if it's taking into account the world that you're living in. I mean, there's some kind of precipitous effect. Like if you try and do something which maybe changes the way an audience views movies and what they want to see in the movie theater, then it will kind of change their mind in general and make them open a little bit to how they live the rest of their life. I mean, that's kind of vaguely what I think, because, you know, seeing movies has changed the way I view the world. I don't know, I feel like you can only really do stuff for yourself, and I think if you try and do a movie or do any kind of job where it feels like you're you need to reach, your reach is out exceeds your grasp, and you have to kind of develop, you have to work on yourself, then just doing that does something for the world, I think.
We're in the Black Bonnie and Clyde.
Daniel, in Queen and Slim, they're kind of like cinematic, you know, Bonnie and Clyde, real life heroes to the African American community, certainly. Growing up, did you feel like you saw that kind of character reflected on screen for you? Like, who were your cinematic heroes?
I was a sitcom kind of guy, so I was I was watching Fresh Prince. They looked like me, and they reminded me of my home, reminded people around me, even though I was in another continent. A lot of the characters Eddie played.
You can play me in the Eddie Murphy story.
Give me the ring and the glove.
And with that, I think, gentlemen, I thank you all for your time today. We're going to have to wrap up this conversation. So for The Envelope, I'm Mark Olson.
I'm Amy Kaufman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So don't take any cheap shots.
Close that door, please. Thanks so much.
My first
acting
role
was with
Rin Tin Tin.
I played a kid, because I was a kid.
On Saturday Night Live.
And it was in a movie called Labyrinth of Passions.
Was playing Cinderella.
Yeah.
You've been watching Spectrum News 1 presents LA Times The Envelope Roundtables. Brought to you by the Amazon original movie, The Report, for awards consideration.